The Blue Bombers are rogue underdogs against the BC Lions this week in a game that will decide the season series between the two teams and essentially decide first place in the West Division. Winnipeg beat the depleted Toronto Argonauts in comeback fashion last week, while the Lions have won 4 straight games. Who do you have in this matchup of West Division contenders?
I'm taking BC this week. And I'm taking BC this week because I think that home field advantage, Jordan Maximic and all of those fantastic receivers the Lions have an advantage on that track field surface. And I think that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers secondary, which has struggled at times this year, is really going to miss Demario Houston. Looks like he's not going to play this week. So I am taking BC, which I think is really bad news for the Bombers, because if they do in fact lose this game, if the West Final is in Vancouver, I think that the Lions are going to win that game as well. I think the Bombers win the West Final if it's in Winnipeg and they can get Brady Oliveira going in the cold. But out west, I like BC's chances. I'm taking the Lions.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this matchup a ton, and I keep trying to convince myself one way or the other. The way I look at this, the Lions have had some inconsistency in the last few weeks, some slow starts or some difficulty finishing. The Bombers have shown that they bounce back extremely well from uncharacteristic performances. And I think last week against Toronto, they expected to blow out the Argos with a backup quarterback, and they got humbled a little bit. And the last thing you want to do is face the Bombers when they've been humbled. So they're coming out. I think Winnipeg's going to be firing on all cylinders. BC may be a little bit cocky. They may not be entirely prepared. I think the Blue Bombers will squeak out a win in this one, even though I think Vernon Adams Jr. is the better quarterback.
That's debatable, but Mike O'Shea will have his team focused here. I totally agree with JC's point there that last week losing to the Argonauts while Chad Kelly was pinned to the bench is going to be something that he's going to be using for motivation for this team. And until I see Vernon Adams do it and beat a big time team in a big time game and doesn't make a mistake, then I'm going to go with the Bombers. The first part of that doubleheader, the Edmonton Elks visit the Toronto Argonauts on Friday in a game that currently has no betting line, but you can find it at 3downnation.com. And of course, if you choose to bet through us, make sure you do it responsibly. And the reason, presumably, that there is no line yet is because the Argos have not named a starting quarterback. Who do you think will take this one, and where would you put the line?
I would put this line at Toronto Argonauts -4. And the reason for that is generally home teams get 3 points anyway. I think the Argos deserve a little more than that, but I wouldn't go as high as a touchdown. If this was as high as a touchdown, I would happily be taking the Edmonton Elks simply because we know the Argos are going to be resting guys. Now, I've heard from some sources that it appears as though Chad Kelly is more likely to play the home games, which can help, of course, Toronto's gate, help the interest in the games, and maybe he will rest for the away games, as we saw with the Toronto Argonauts when they came to Winnipeg and almost won this past week at IG Field. So I will take the Argos to win this game because I still think their depth is fantastic, but I do think it will be a close game as the Elks look to keep their faint playoff hopes alive.
The Elks just have more to play for here. And so I'm taking them because they've got a guy who plays as hard as anybody in the league when he has that opportunity in Trey Ford. I think they're going to come out of this game with a purpose, while the Argos are going to go through the motions, as we've seen in the past. And really, I think Edmonton should be favored. I take them up until a 4 point favorite in this game because I feel that strongly about Trey Ford versus this particular version of the Argos.
Edmonton knows they got to have this game to keep their postseason chances alive. They're coming off a bye week, so I like Trey Ford in Edmonton to get it done. But that said, it's not going to be easy no matter who is out there in double blue for the Argonauts. I think they've shown, especially last week in Winnipeg, that even if they don't have their full complement of starters, that they can still be a very competitive team. So I'll take the Elks, but it ain't going to be easy.
The Roughriders are 4-point home favorites over the Hamilton Tiger Cats on Saturday in what will surely be an emotional game in Regina as the team mourns the loss of George Reed and celebrates the 2013 Grey Cup champions as they enter the Plaza of Honor. Can Saskatchewan shake a 4-game losing streak and move one step closer to punching their ticket to the playoffs?
Look, I think the Hamilton Tiger Cats are clearly the better of these two football teams. But if you are the Saskatchewan Roughriders and you have to walk into a game the week of George Reed's death and you do not come out with a win, you're not going to be back next year. There's no escaping that. There is no coming back from that. And I think the weight of that will be on this organization, and they have to rise to that occasion. So for that reason, I'm going to pick the Saskatchewan Roughriders to win and cover this game. They should come out with an emotional response, just as number 34 deserves.
The Tiger Cats are playing way better ball right now. They still could have a shot, I think, to host a home playoff game. Is that right?
They do have a shot, yes.
There we go. So lots to play for. I actually think this team, at this point in time, all due respect to Bo Levi Mitchell, is better off with either Matthew Schilt or Taylor Powell at quarterback. I like the Ticats to get it done. Take them on the money line. Great value with the Tabbies.
If the Saskatchewan Roughriders don't win this game, I don't think they'll win another game this year. This table has been set. The emotion should carry this team through, just as it did against the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the 2013 Grey Cup. For that reason and that reason alone, I have to take the Riders to win and cover here. If they can't do it now, they will never do it, simply.
The Ottawa Redblacks are 6.5-point underdogs in Montreal this week, as they will look to avoid elimination from the playoffs with a win. Meanwhile, the Alouettes can clinch second place in the standings with a victory paired with a Hamilton loss. These teams met last week, with Montreal winning easily by a score of 32-15. Who you got?
There is no way, again, I'm going to trust this Ottawa team. After last week, I thought it would be a spirited effort. That was awful. Redblacks need to be better. I'm picking Montreal.
I am taking the Montreal Alouettes as well because of just how uninspired the Ottawa Redblacks look. Dustin Crum, JC and I sang his praises last week on this show, and then he went and played literally the worst game of his career. That pick six was awful. That is like obvious man coverage, and you throw the latest out route known to man working against arguably the fastest defensive back in the league. Nightmare situation for that team. The Alouettes, with the win paired with the Ticats loss, will clinch a home playoff game for the second straight year. Obviously, the Alouettes will know the result of the Saskatchewan-Hamilton game by this point. I'm taking the Alouettes.
They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and expecting a different result. Well, lock me up in the loony bin, because I am picking the Ottawa Redblacks for a second straight week. And simply it's because I think it's too difficult to sweep a 4-game season series in a league like the CFL. I think inevitably the underdog has to come out with one. The Redblacks need a bounce back performance. I think they get one here.